those who are involved in making it come to life. Join us as we go behind the door.
Good evening, roomies, and welcome back to another episode of Behind the Door with the Grey Rooms podcast. I am your host, Brooks Bigley, and with me tonight is Kyle Wilcox, the author of Season 4, Episode 14, entitled The Tower. How are you this evening, Kyle?
I'm good, thanks. It's nice to finally meet you, I guess, after, kind of talking a little bit over Twitter. But, I'm excited. It's going to be good.
I'm excited to have you here. I say that like literally every episode. I'm excited to talk about the story, but your story was so much fun to hear and listen to. So it's a good thing that you hear that we can break it down and dissect just what the hell is going on in this tower.
Yep, we can. Yes.
Hey, where are you located at?
So I'm originally from New Zealand, but I've lived in London and the UK in general for the past 7 or so years. And yeah, I don't have any plans of leaving, really. Despite all of the shit that's going on right now here with the rising cost of living and the rampant transphobia and homophobia in the media, I'm kind of settled here, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Well, I mean, if you're happy, then that's a good thing, I guess. If you feel safe and this is what you want, then for sure it's good. You don't happen to live in a giant, tall apartment building, do you?
Not anymore. No,
Okay.
Not anymore. I'm on the 3rd floor now, which is a little bit nicer. I can actually see the ground when I look outside. That's always a comfort.
Yeah, isn't that something? I grew up living on the 1st floor in the town that I'm from, and now I currently do live on the 2nd floor in an apartment. And so there's something about that. There's something about being able to look down at the ground, be level with the tops of the trees. You feel a little bit better, a little bit on top of things, I suppose, instead of stuck in everything.
Yeah, and you can kind of people watch as well, like especially in summer when people are spending more time outside. You can kind of peek out the window and kind of see what everyone else in the street or in the area is getting up to.
Right. Oh, yeah, I love to people watch. Sometimes I'll go to a shopping center and get a bite to eat and then just sit in with my sunglasses on, and I'll be eating whatever I am eating, but I'm quietly just watching. It's fun to just observe how other people are, not in any creepy way, but of course just to see how your fellow man is, I guess.
Exactly. Sometimes they just come to you, especially living in London. It's a very vibrant city, so sometimes you will just be people watching, and some interesting things will happen. Someone will be having an argument, or there'll be a busker or a street performer, so there'll always be something interesting to look at.
Oh, for sure. And to be able to interact with people, in that respect, I love talking with people. So I have no bones about a stranger approaching me, if they're polite, of course, and then engaging in conversation. That's what humanity is all about, basically, I think, is all of the ways that we interact with each other. So speaking of interacting, let's get into talking about your story here. I mean, there's, again, as many of our other stories this season, there's lots of themes here, between socioeconomic statuses and culture and just the way that the future could end up becoming based on how current events. You have this unlucky hero who just reluctantly is thrown into a game against his will, and I got a lot of funny Squid Game type feels out of your story. So we can get to that. I don't know if you actually were inspired or not, but
oh no, I wrote this before Squid Game came out.
Okay.
So it was more Black Mirror inspired.
Yes. Yeah. So I want to get into that. How then, when you started writing this story, you immediately drop us into this different world, and I get the feeling it's the not too distant future. It's maybe only a couple decades, or if even that, ahead of what everything is now, and it seems like a very dangerous route that the planet has gone down. What then inspired that? How did you begin with all of this?
So Two kind of things kind of brought it together. The first kind of bit is when there is the separation of the rich door from the poor door, because that's actually something that does go on in social housing currently in the UK, where people who are in social housing and whatnot, some buildings require them to use a separate entrance from like the main entrance. So that's something that's already going on right now. So that's an element I did want to bring in, is just kind of a little, I wouldn't say nod per se, but kind of an acknowledgement of this is already something that's happening. So everything else is potentially not as unrealistic. If, we've already got one part of it happening, why can't we have more part of it happening? And a lot of jobs that I've been like applying for and looking at after I got my master's, a lot of them also had a volunteer element where they're like, hey, we'll pay you to go volunteer, or hey, you need to go volunteer or do this or do that, which is why I wanted my character to do that, because that is the kind of way that a lot of companies these days I found are trying to make themselves integrate with our community by sending their staff out and volunteering, whether that be like a genuine want or just something they're doing. So they look like a company that's actually, trying to help with everything in this day and age. And then the rest of it was actually kind of quasi based upon a dream that I had. I write a lot of my stories, I base them upon dreams that I have, because sometimes I have very, very, very vivid dreams. Not the whole thing of this, fortunately, but just the arcade part of it was something that I did dream. Like, so I came down into like a courtyard, and then after the courtyard there was the arcade, and then I just kind of started with that and kind of worked it into this kind of death game.
Yeah. Well, so this isn't even really a fantasy story. This is almost a reality. This is just fortune telling, looking a little bit into the future and bringing it to us. So you basically are living kind of not in this specific situation, but you're living kind of within this setting of the UK, and just expanding your ideas about where everything could logically go. I had no idea that you would separate, not literally the poor from the rich. Or do you actually mean that, like, this door, poor people go in, the same building, and then this door, rich people go in, depending on where they live in the building?
Yeah, so there's a couple of controversies have come out as well. Like, they've got like playgrounds for the kids to play in, but the kids who are like social housing children aren't allowed to go into the big playground. There's a central London high tower that has a big pool that connects the two buildings with like a glass bottom, and the people who are social housing tenants aren't able to access this pool. So they've got all of these blockades that are stopping them from accessing things that are actually going to be beneficial to them, which is, a rooftop with sunlight, a pool so they can get exercise, a playground where the kids can just go and expand energy. And then the same thing is, they're required to use a different door that's sometimes round the block or not as accessible from the main door, just because they happen to be in council housing, social housing, or have some kind of income support from the government that's paying for this house. It's something that is happening, which is very sad, as well as in the UK. We have a thing called anti-social behaviour order, so people who have committed crimes. If you live in my particular area, you're not allowed to be a part of this. They have kind of like a program to kind of like counsel you and help you and support you. But if you live in my particular suburb, you're not allowed to participate in that thing. And now anytime you read something in the newspaper, it's this area is crime filled, this area is dirty, this area is filthy. They only collect our rubbish once a week. People aren't allowed to access the same services as someone who lives right across the street. So they're creating this narrative as well of a place that is so dangerous and so unsafe, so they can justify, creating that kind of tower where everything's knocked down, they rebuild it again, they sell the homes for millions of pounds. So it's a very vicious and very calculated cycle that is being created.
Yeah, it begets itself, and like you said, oh well, this is why we do it because of this, but the government is causing it, and then saying that's why. Yeah, there's no, it's the chicken or the egg, I guess. Well, geez, your story just took on a whole new meaning because again, like I see all of the similarities here on what you're experiencing currently. And then that leading into you writing your story, so like your narrator starts off. And what I did appreciate about your narrator is that he never seemed like an asshole. He didn't seem jaded, with life. He just went through all of this. And even when everything went topsy-turvy and he ended up forced into this killing game, he wasn't like, oh God, what was me? He wasn't freaking out, but in the beginning, he is helping He's not reluctantly helping these people move because, as you stated in the story, or as you set up, he's volunteering, and this is kind of like the job that he knows he has to do. He's a mover, and he helps this rich older woman go into her home, and we get a little bit, just by them interacting, we kind of get a taste of like what her life is like. She clearly doesn't have a care in the world, everyone's moving her stuff in. How did you then, like, were you just looking for just a quick way to get the story started before getting into the meat of it? Because this is only the first 5 minutes of the story, and then boom, he gets in not the wrong elevator, but he gets into an elevator which goes the wrong way, and now the game is afoot. So how did you start to go from your idea of the story into actually fleshing it out this way?
I knew that I didn't want my narrator to be a jaded asshole, because I wanted him to be someone that was just, like a normal everyday person, because I felt like that'd be more relatable and easier to kind of write with. Because if you write someone who is already an asshole, you're kind of already setting up that something bad is going to happen, even though that kind of is always how the Grey Room ends. You want to create someone that's, like I said, is relatable and that you can work with in a way that doesn't feel as forced towards the death. Like, you can create a more personable character. They can create better relationships. So when it does happen, it can be a little bit harder and a little bit sadder. And you don't necessarily always need them to be the anti-hero or be, the antagonist. You can just have someone who's a dude just going through life, just trying to survive, and then happens to come across this obstacle of the death game.
Yeah, that's a great point, because, as you said, and as every episode is, we all know listening that the main character is going to die. But you're right. Sometimes the character can be written a certain way that you're like, yeah, fuck this guy. I can't wait for him to die. Whatever. Let's just see how badly it ends. Versus making the character personable and like, maybe he'll get out. I've said this before in Behind the Doors I really love those stories where they're gonna die, but you're like, but maybe something will change. But maybe your character would have figured out a way to beat that third test. Just maybe. And that's just it's just how it's written. So it's really cool that you were able to keep your character level that way. He wasn't just reacting to everything. He was like, okay, this happened. Let's do this now. Let's get through this now. So now you said that you wrote this before Squid Game. We have our characters in colored jumpsuits, like Squid Game. I think you should probably sue Squid Game for copyright infringement, just because you clearly... You conceptualize this first.
The dude's been working on it for the better part of a decade, so I feel like he's got slight advantage on me there.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Oh, okay. Point taken. I get it now. Yeah. You can congruently come up with, I've heard there's a name for that, where like two people on opposite sides of the world can literally invent or come up with the same concept and idea. And then it's just whoever gets it to market first. Man, you could have had a Netflix series, but hey, whatever. That's
I could.
It is.
I could be living in a tower like that, paying to watch poor people fight to the death,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. You would be an antagonist. So, our character takes the elevator, goes the wrong way. One thing that struck me too was like when he's talking to the bearded man, and we're just kind of jumping around now, but when he talked to the bearded man, I forgot, we named him Beard, I guess, in the script, for the actor. Yeah. But you only hear him call like the bearded guy, the guy with the beard. He mentioned that he didn't know what the game would be, but he kind of chose to be there, right? Because he was living like in the alleyway behind a different tower. And then he mentions to the narrator that, someone asked me if I wanted a better life, and so I chose to be here. But our narrator did not get to choose that. He just took the elevator and it went in the wrong direction. And he's like, what am I doing? Oh, I got to sign this. I have a life and limb. What? I risk my eye. What is this about? And then he went ahead on it. So he didn't even get to choose. Was that intentional or just kind of how your story unfolded?
It wasn't really intentional. It was something very much needed to get the story going. But also, I feel like it's always interesting, kind of like in the Hunger Games, the second one. Katniss didn't have a choice to go and do the Court of Quell. But Peter, he chose to go into it. So I kind of wanted to have something kind of like that as well, where it's like you can have both people coming into the same problem from different sides and for different reasons. So obviously our narrator didn't get a choice, but the bearded guy did get a choice, and they both can be aiming for that same outcome despite coming from a vastly different arrival point.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that makes sense. Exactly. I like that because it does offer slight nuances in terms of the origins of the people. It wasn't like all 20 people just showed up and like, oh, hey, I heard there was a vacation spot if we just, took a survey. Wait, what? We got to do a death game now? But anyways, okay, yeah. So yeah, that wasn't intentional.
No. If it was something that was kind of like an expanded universe, you know what I mean, where, it was kind of like a Squid Game kind of thing, you'd be able to see more of a progression, I guess, of their intentions. Obviously one person's going in with the intention of a better life, but a narrator is going in with the intention of just surviving. So you could really have a nice play about with that, I guess, as well, if it was like a bigger, wider, more expanded story.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you could have maybe even had your narrator, fight back like, whoa, I don't want to be here. I didn't choose this. What's going on? And then that could have just segued a slight subplot into someone explaining the games to him or something. Yeah, you could have gone in any direction. But, for being concise for this story, being on a podcast, I think it flowed very well. It definitely went from this to this to this to get us to our conclusion, extremely well.
Yeah. You gotta hit the right storytelling beats.
Exactly. Yeah. And so you did that. And oh man, I was like, oh shit. Like I was thinking, this game ain't so bad. They just got to find an egg in an arcade machine. This ain't so bad. And then he gets through. And then what happened? Like the doors shut and locked to everyone else. And they basically just got burned to death, I guess, right? They were just crisp and fried. Like, oh man, was that, I'm forgetting now after the second test, was that the same? That was basically what would keep happening, right? In the second test, the people that didn't make it, they also were burned? That's right, because he was talking about seeing the smoke under the door.
Fastest way to kind of clear the area, I guess, is just burning everyone, because, resetting it for the next lot of people that are coming through, obviously they're going to be going through the same challenges. Didn't get into quite how you'd make so the machines don't melt in the fire, but, you don't have to get rid of the bodies, you don't have to have any mass graves if you just burn everyone. You know what I mean? And then, I kind of wanted to mention that was how they were kind of fueling the building, was like the fires of the bodies, were what kept the electricity going.
Oh, that's so disgusting.
But I was like, no, I don't. I was like, I can't really work that into it. I can't. There's no way to introduce that, because it's not like at the end we're going to have someone someone being aware of that. So there was no way to kind of put that in the narrative that didn't feel very forced.
Yeah, you would have had to have like a janitor or something just make some weird aside comment like, oh, yay, it's going to be a cold winter, but we get to heat the tower now. That would have been. But still, it's insidious because we know that the narrator fell to his death again into some kind of fire. So that definitely that was always there. Can you just help explain? I'm just revealing my ignorance here. The second test, when and maybe this is just because of being a British word versus being an English, or it is English, being an American word. You said it was like a trolley. Like, I know what a carabiner is and the line and all that, but like a trolley, was it like the color-coded boxes, was it like a little tiny like basket that they were able to stand in and move themselves along the line? So
the zip line kind of thing, the trolley I used to work in outdoor education, so I'm trying to explain it the best I can. It's a shape, it's a thing that when you go on zip lines that you put on the zip line to make you go wee.
Okay.
That's the kind of thing. Or if you mean like, we also have trolley, which is the thing you use for shopping that you put your groceries in.
Yeah, like a shopping. That's what I was thinking. Like a my brain was picturing like the basket that hangs from a hot air balloon. I thought maybe that's what it. But you mean like with the carabiner that's holding your harness, the carabiner snaps into the trolley, which is connected to the zip line.
Yeah, so that's what you click. Like when you're going, like we have a thing in the UK called Go 8, where you just like go around on like zip lines and stuff. So you'll have your carabiner attached to your harness, then you'll have some ropes that are all done with fancy knots that will clip into the trolley, and that's what you can zip around on.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Now everything makes sense. I don't know why, between reading the script and listening to it, I just was like, I think they're climbing into a box that's hanging from the rope. I think so. I'm clearly that was not correct. Forgive me, everybody listening. So then we have our last two contestants. We have the narrator and then the bearded one, making it to the end to these funhouse mirror type situation, and that just was like, again, like your character stayed very neutral, very not calm. I guess he was calm. I don't know. He was calm as he could be, but definitely like a confusing and frustrating test to go through, and somehow. The bearded guy was behind, and now the bearded guy is ahead, and how do we end? We end with I guess, was it that the bearded man had already used that ladder, and then our main character, our narrator, was able to climb up the same ladder, and then the bearded guy was just kicking it off of the walls?
Yeah, I was kind of the way I kind of imagine it is kind of like very much a trope, I guess, in like maybe sci-fi or any other kind of genre where all of the protagonists are kind of up on one single ladder. Below them is the 500-foot drop to the death, and the person above them is kind of kicking down on them, and they're battling and they're raging against each other. I kind of wanted that rather than two separate ladders, because then obviously you could have a tit-tat-tat of people going up and down. I like the idea of there only being one exit where you can see it up in front of you. You can see your way out, and then you can also see that person. You can see that opponent right up in front of you, and that would create a kind of a drive, a kind of a power within you to try to push a little bit further rather than just to give up. And then obviously making it fall down behind him just guaranteed that win, because, we don't know what's ahead of him. We don't know if there's going to be another challenge, if there's going to be like in Squid Games, if there's going to be like a glass floor, So obviously by getting rid of the competition there and then, you've kind of guaranteed your win rather than, maybe finding something else out when you get to the top.
Yeah. No, that's perfect. Exactly. Because you're funneling the players, into one single spot to get through, and you clearly only the two of them left. So yeah, the victor was going to use that ladder. I like that. Yeah, it would have been weird to have two ladders, or each of them have to reach their own ladder. That would definitely not have been so suspenseful. But yeah, there's that single ladder. We got to get to it, and then it can be used as its own weapon, basically against the second place loser, because they didn't win. They didn't do it. So, and then boom, our narrator falls to his death, and finito. That's it.
Yeah. And I feel like a mirror maze is a nice ending, because I feel like most people would have been to like a fun house or a carnival or some kind of Ripley's Believe It or Not esque tourist attraction or tourist trap where there is a mirror maze. So most people know what that experience is like of being in there, but they don't have that pressure of, if I don't get out, I'm going to die. It's just I need to get out because I need to go to the bathroom. The stakes are very different, but it's an experience that people will they can visualize it a lot easier. Same with it was like, a hedge maze or a corn maze, I feel like could have had a similar thing, but a mirror maze, you're looking back at yourself, you can't, like with a corn maze, you can kind of force your way through it, but with a mirror maze, everything is confusing. Everything is throwing you off because you're just seeing yourself reflected back. You don't know which way is up. It's a lot more tricky to navigate.
Yeah, there's a panic to get out. I mean, I grew up going to carnivals, and for sure, every time you went through, the fun house or whatever they called it, at the end, I feel like they did have the mirrors at the end, because how do you wring out one last bit of scare from the person going through it? Make them confused, make them panic that, holy shit, I'm never going to actually get out of this thing. Like you said, I got to piss, but I got to get out of here first. I keep running into the mirror thinking it's the door, and it's not. Yeah, that's right. And with a corn maze, there's some rule. If you just keep following to the right, drag your hand along the right and always go right or something, you can inevitably always get out of a corn maze or other type of maze. So it was a great wrap up to your story. Bravo, well done. This was a fun adventure
for the
much. Grey Rooms. Yeah. So when it comes to writing in general, like what do you do? What is your style? What are you into?
I do like to write a lot of stuff based upon my dreams, because like I said, I have very, very vivid dreams, and I've almost like I'm feeling like I'm acting out within a movie. And a lot of them have small little elements of things that I feel like I can kind of turn into a story. Sometimes I've just got like a couple of sentences. Like, for example, one of them I've got written at the moment is people stuck in 2021 all thinking it's a different time. So, little things like that, where that's just like the inspiration point for me then to go and create something. Or, because I'm traveling home so often at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning, interesting things start to happen. Obviously, your mind play tricks on you in the shadows. Like, I get off my bus right across the road from a funeral home, and I live right outside a cemetery. So your mind plays a lot of tricks on you when you're in that kind of area. You think you see a statue move, you think you see someone who's there but isn't, and you can have a lot of fun kind of working with that tiredness mixed with darkness that comes from being a shift worker.
Yeah. It seems like you definitely play with the idea of us being afraid of what we can't see versus there being this giant. There was no monster in the tower. It was. I mean, whoever the voice announcer was, it doesn't matter. It could have just been a paid actor to do the voice on the microphone versus it being some. You didn't have to create a character like, oh, my name is Bill and I run all the towers and I like to do this to people and blah blah blah. It didn't matter. So it was more of just, well, shit. The tower itself, I guess, was the monster, but it was overcoming the thing that we can't see, just getting through the thing. So I see what you mean, that like you like to pick at like the dark a little bit and use that the unknown in order to scare. So do you write other horror stories?
Yeah, I didn't really get into writing horror until about 18 or so months ago. Before that, I kind of would write slice of life. I've done NaNoWriMo a lot. I've done NaNoWriMo about 7 times now. So I do I've done like a fantasy one, I've done like a family one, I've done like a young adult one. I just kind of write whatever I feel right. Currently, I'm very much enjoying doing short stories and obviously kind of radio plays rather than full-fledged novels, because I find sometimes it's a lot easier to get the story out quicker. You don't have to develop the characters as much, but also it's still sometimes fun to try and write a full, 50,000 word novel and try and stretch out as much as you can. So I just kind of do whatever I feel like doing and kind of what feels right at the time.
That's good. Yeah, I almost realized I was almost pigeonholing you by being like, what kind of horror stories do you write? I mean, it's almost not even fair to say that we're just a horror podcast, because a lot of our stories only really skirt with the idea of horror, but it's definitely suspense and thriller, and we got some sci-fi. Just being scary does not mean that it's horror per se. So, or vice versa. It's just that horror itself is such a huge genre that there's multiple subgenres, underneath it. And I don't just mean saying, oh, well, this is romantic horror and this is comedy horror, because those are still very specific branches of horror. But if I was hard pressed, I would say that your story was more suspenseful thriller, bit of sci-fi. Not just, that's horror. That's a horror episode. So,
yeah. And that's why for the longest time I thought I didn't like horror, because I didn't really realize that there was such a variety in it, from, like comedy horror, like the Scary Movie franchise, like parody horror, I guess, as well, to like that suspenseful thriller. And I like the suspenseful thriller a lot more, because I don't like to have, blood and guts and, body things thrown at me, because that to me, it's meant to create a fear and it's meant to create a scare, and it's all artificial because you're not actually playing with the human emotions. You're just, rah, here's a leg. It's a lot more fun to actually play with the mind, play with the emotions. There's lots of good films out there. I can never remember the names of them for the life of me, which is really bad. There's the one where the guy goes into the hotel room and he kind of gets stuck in a kind of like time loop, and it's like, well, no one's ever lasted 24 hours in this hotel room. They've all taken their own life within the 24 hours. That
John Cusack, the 1408 or something different.
Yeah, 1408. That's it.
Okay. Yeah.
I was like 2408. No, that's a game. No, 1408. So like that's the kind of thing that I'm really into, where it's like, oh, this is quite obviously like not realistic. This is not something that's going to happen. But good God, is it a mind fuck? Because it's like, what is reality? What isn't, and they're not relying on like, cheap jump scares trying to get the horror, to get the heart rate racing. They build the suspension and they build the tense and the tension so beautifully that it works, and it's more accessible, I find, because it's not, like I said, relying on just throwing blood and guts at the screen.
Yeah. That's a very myopic way of making horror, because it's something that we don't relate to whatsoever. We don't see, well, most of us don't see blood and guts and gore all over the place all the time, and we certainly don't see monsters all the time, So
No.
having that more speculative fiction of like, is someone following me home? That's creepy. Versus like, oh, is the monster with 8, tentacles chasing me home? That's not really, that's scary, but it's so you can remove yourself and detach yourself from that, and then it's not scary anymore. So yeah, something that's more believable that actually could possibly happen.
And, sometimes the biggest horror is, the one inside our own head. It's the tricks of the light, or like when you've been told something. I can't remember what the term is. It's kind of like when you've been told to look out for like a red car, you're going to see more red cars because you're looking out for them. That kind of thing on horror, where it's your own mind tricking you and playing around with you, that's making you notice all those things, and it's building the heart rate from there.
Yeah. You and I are the same. We appreciate the same types of horror. I definitely am into that too. I like to have my mind fucked to make me scared. If it's a slasher flick, I mean, those are like, I guess, fun to watch, but you really don't have to pay attention. You can put it on in the background. I mean, even then, it's like, but I don't want to piss people off that enjoy slasher flicks. They're fine. But anyways,
the classic slashers. I like the classic slashers a lot more. They're always very good. They're always a good go-to horror. Is one of the more classic ones, from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. They've got some incredible writing and incredible, actors that have, gone through the ringer with them, and they've not had to, use as much, CGI, and kind of had more freedom, I feel, to kind of work within that genre, because it was kind of new and kind of different back then, so they could kind of make new stories. And now a lot of the found footage horror ones, not like Blair Witch Project, but crumbs, can't remember the name of them, but some of the newer ones seem just to be following the same patterns, and after a while sadly becomes predictable.
Yeah, they're all clones of each other. It's just rinse and repeat, basically. Yeah. Absolutely.
Something, only 7 stories.
Yeah. So how did you feel hearing your story turned into an audio production? Do you listen to lots of different podcasts? How was it to hear your story come alive?
Oh, I listen to a lot of podcasts. So I currently have 179 that I have on like my app. So I listened to a wide variety of them, and it was nice to hear it, because it was like, I was nervous at first. I didn't listen to it for a few days after it dropped, because I kind of was just trying to, I don't know if I was psyching myself up, just because it's like, oh, this is something that I have made. This is like, one of my babies. And now it's kind of out there in the world. And I was like a little bit nervous to listen to it, but I bit the bullet and I did it, and I was really happy with it, because it's, it's very much different from like if you got like a poetry or piece published in like an anthology. That's still great, but there's just, it takes it one step higher when there's either like a visual or an audio medium that it's published in, because it kind of brings the world to life more. And it's interesting to hear, the choices that the voice actors made in terms of like accents. It made the characters more human. It kind of really brought them into the world and kind of brought them to life in, a way I didn't expect, but in a good way that I didn't expect it, because it was like, oh, this is the choices that were made, and I do like it. It works, and it's fun, and it's also, it's a great experience.
Yeah. So, sometimes we have to move some sentences around just because, auditorily it might not hit the same as, the original scripts that we get in from all the authors. So, sometimes we'll change, or even for like listening preferences, we might change a word if we are afraid that absolutely the author knows and the town that the author's from knows what the word means, but maybe more of the listener base that we're aware of might not know. We'll change a word here and there. You know, we do that sometimes. So,
and that's very fair. Like, I feel like they did that in some of the Harry Potter films. Like, you know, they used Oyster cards and for like the UK edit, but for the American edit, you know, they used paper tickets for getting into the tube. You know, you have to make it so the audience understands what's going on. Like now they could use the tap cards because everyone has contactless. I know it's not as big in America. A lot of the Americans we have come to our bar still have to sign for their cards, which is so strange to us because we're so used to people just like tapping their phones or tapping their wallet or their watch and just taking their drinks and going, you know?
Yeah. So it's important note of course, maintain the original feeling of any given situation, you know, so it's always fun to turn these things into audio and then hear back. You know, I've never heard an author be like, I loved it, but I've never heard that. So I'm glad yet again that we have made another author proud and happy of their story.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Well, hey, as we draw to a close here, can you tell me any social medias that you might be on or any websites where any of your writings are located that, you know, our listeners and fans can, you know, maybe find you and find other things that you have worked on?
Yes. So my Twitter, which was embedded when you put the story out there, is at Mr. MR_KY_W. And then I also have an Instagram, which is Mr. MR_KY_Alexander, ALEXANDER. I don't have anywhere that I publish any of my stories just yet. I'm very secretive of them because I very much have they need to be perfect complex, but I'm working on that. I'm working on it, and being able to publish it with, you know, places like the Grey Rooms is helping me, you know, kind of get over that, keep it secret, and kind of want to share it more with the world.
Don't take my word for it, you know, whatever you're comfortable with, but you should for sure share your gift of writing, you know, with the larger world. I mean, we all have ideas and we all have thoughts that we want to get out, and if you've got a great plot, push it out there and see, you know, what people think. Because the worst, I have always said, the worst is that there are so many good ideas and stories out there that never leave the person's head, and so it never gets to be shared with anybody. And so we're lacking that. We're losing out on that opportunity. And then, as you and I, you know, have discussed, like, but we can still get the same 7 stories retold over and over again, and that's because someone has that great story, but maybe they're just not ready to take that step to reveal it yet. So I always want to encourage writers and authors, put your stuff out there in any way conceivable. Always try and get your stuff out there.
Yeah.
Well, it was great of you for joining us tonight, Kyle. I appreciate you taking the time to sit and chat, and I thank you for sharing your world with us here in the Grey Rooms.
Thank you for having me. I can't wait to hear, you know, how the rest of the season, you know, wraps up. It's going to be interesting to see and hear.
Oh man, this has been our best season yet. This has been crazy and all over the place and fun and hard and entertaining. Yeah, this has been a joy. I mean, the content we've had this season, top notch. So just wait until season 5.
Looking forward to it.
Yes. And as usual, the biggest thank you goes out to our fans and followers who listen daily and spread the good word of Bob. May you languish, lament, and loathe, but always with love. # stay gray. Take care and enjoy your evening, Kyle.
Thank you very much. You too.
Thank you. And good night, folks. Bye.
Join us each week after every episode for another edition of Behind the Door.